everybody. Welcome to the fourth episode of our podcast. My name is Aurora.
My name's Monique.
And we welcome you to another episode of our show. We also want to extend an open invitation to any of our ET star families and friends out there who have something positive or productive to contribute to our conversation. And we would love it if you could make your presence known, but do not interfere with our electronics. Yeah, it's like, Monique, your voice is already cutting out. I have no idea what's going on. It's like you almost have to wait like a second before I say something. Anyhow, you know what? I'll ask you to repeat yourself if I can't hear it, because it's recording on my computer. So if I can't hear you, it doesn't get recorded. Alrighty. So, what did we talk about last time? It was experiences, right? The different types of experiences. Okay. So today we were thinking maybe we could talk about how do you know that what you're experiencing is real?
Mm-hmm.
So, that's a really good question. For example, let's play a little game. Here I'm holding my blue Sharpie, right? And you can see it, and I can see it. Does that make it real?
Yeah.
Because we can both see it, and as long as other people come around, they can all see it. So we can all agree that it exists. Now, there are some who say that our reality is an illusion. Well, how can that be if what I'm looking at is real? So I would like to suggest that if we buy into the idea that our reality is an illusion, I think we need to say that perhaps our experience of reality is not an illusion. And this is where things start to get a little interesting. Some have said that time does not exist, that everything happens in the here and now, and that it's only our experience of time that exists. So, when it comes to recognizing whether or not something is real in 3D, it's pretty easy to determine, right? I'm looking at it, I can see it through my five senses. My experience of it is actually what I'm perceiving through my five senses. So that's what makes it real, especially if somebody else also sees it. But what about things like, let's say, Monique, you and I are looking at the sky and we both see a UFO. Now you see a triangle, I see a boomerang. Who's right?
Both.
We're both right?
Both right.
Ah.
We're meant to see exactly what we're supposed to see, And it's interesting. I just want to mention this real quick. This is fascinating to me. We, as humans, and believe me, I'm not trying to make this a religious topic or anything like that, but most people around the world believe, or, you have those who don't believe like at all, that are atheists, but most believe in a God, creator, source, whatever you want to call it, without ever seeing it. Okay?
That's a good point.
Blind faith. God, devil, yada, yada. Okay? Angels. But when it comes to ETs or being contacted, there's a, whoop, wait a minute. That's, you're allowed to believe in the God and all this, but when you talk about this being or that being, well, that's probably just your imagination.
Yeah, it's interesting how the same rules don't apply.
Right.
It's like it's okay to believe that something is real that nobody has seen with their physical eyes, or perhaps, not many have seen with their physical eyes. And yet, on the other hand, there's evidence that there are ETs around, probably more evidence that there are ETs, in the flesh, so to speak, than, angels and other spirits. And yet we dismiss that as it's not real. So I think that's what is important, I think, for us to really look at, because it seems the same rules don't apply. And we have been conditioned to dismiss anything that cannot be validated by another person. I mean, even the scientific method, for the conclusion of an experiment to be real, the experiment has to be duplicated and get the same result. So it's all about, this empirical evidence, which makes sense in 3D. But let's get back to that UFO experience. You see a triangle, I see a boomerang. There are people all around us who see nothing at all. So then, hang on a minute. With empirical evidence, it has to be validated by other people. Somebody who's not seeing anything clearly is not having the same experience I'm having. And even the two of us who recognize there's something in the sky are seeing two completely different things. So what's real? And I think this is a perfect example of how this idea of our experience of reality is real. Not so much reality all around. If we focus on our experience of reality, looking at it from that perspective can really help us to accept other things that we experience beyond this 3D realm. Because the same rules don't apply.
And we go through, you and I have had these conversations. Like, this isn't just like, okay, now we're beyond that. We still struggle with a lot of this ourselves, me and Aurora, because, like, it's funny. A very interesting thing is Aurora and I got contacted by a female being, and we had completely different perceptions of how she looked.
Yeah. Yes, we did. Yes, we did.
Connected on the same day, and neither one knew that the other, because we weren't talking that day, because usually on the weekends and that we kind of do our own thing.
Yeah.
And you had your CE5 and all that. And this was last weekend, and I had been at the university with my daughter. I had not slept all night, and I was really tired. But when I was driving, I felt this contact from this female being. I had no idea that later on, when Aurora was doing her own CE5, she had a contact from a female being. And so we kind of both discussed it, and we felt like it was the same being, but we saw her differently.
Yep, we sure did. And this is like the example that I just gave with the UFO. Now, that doesn't mean that my experience is more real than yours, or that I'm right and you're wrong. We just have, different perspectives or perceptions on the same idea. Here's a typical example. You have an 8-ounce glass with 4 ounces of water in it. Is it half empty? Is it half full? It's actually both, depending on how you look at it, right? So it's that same kind of situation with some of these experiences that we have that are beyond the physical. I think that's why, in order for us to be able to validate these experiences, we kind of need to look at them from a slightly different point of view. A lot of the ETs that I am aware of, I recognize are communicating with me through in dream time. And that's actually, I think a lot of people have confirmed that we have quite a few encounters in dream time with ETs, and we go places and so on. So is that real? Are our dreams real? My first knee-jerk reaction is to say, no, of course they're not real. But then what is it that I'm remembering when I wake up in the morning? And why do I make such a big deal about what did that dream mean if it's not real? So you see, there's like this double standard. It's not real, but I'm interested in it. So what is it that I'm interested in if it's not real? And I would like to suggest that our dreams are indeed real. Obviously, the experience is real because you're remembering what you dreamt about, but it's a little more than that. We've been taught that we are just living in 3D, and anything beyond that is not real. everything that has to do with the paranormal, with the UFOs, with anything that is not immediately tangible and seen as a shared reality by everybody. If it's not a shared reality with everybody, it's not real. Basically, that's what it comes down to. And so my dreams, nobody's sharing in my dreams other than, the ETs, but, nobody else is having my dreams is what I'm trying to say. And I would like to suggest that the experiences that we have in dream time actually happen on a separate level of reality. We cannot imagine non-existence. So clearly what I'm dreaming is existing someplace, okay? Even if it's just in my own mind. And I don't mean just in my own mind. It exists. It's someplace. And it would be, I think, very helpful for us not to be so quick to dismiss things that are not part of the shared experience. Because there is a lot of information that we get in our dreams. And I'm not just referring to ETs. I'm referring to our higher mind and, all sorts of other aspects of our consciousness that appear to us in our dreams. So, okay, maybe it's easier to accept that, dream time, it's its own separate reality. I can deal with that and so on. What about our imagination? This one really gets dismissed. It's all in your head. If I can't see it, it's all in your head. But then again, I cannot imagine non-existence. So clearly, what I'm imagining does exist somewhere. If it exists somewhere, does it mean that it's not real? Again, see this thing about what is real? What does it mean to be real? And I've come to the conclusion that in 3D, for something to be considered real, it has to be part of the shared reality. And I am suggesting that what is real is our own experience of whatever that is, in whatever form it comes. What were you going to say, Monique?
It's funny. I heard the words that we often say as humans, seeing is believing.
Yes.
Okay. And it kind of makes me think of now, I kind of mentioned it before. I have Lyme disease, right? But I look like I could run marathons. Like I'm just,
Yeah.
And because I'm not like having decaying pieces of flesh or something falling off of me or just, I'm on my deathbed. There's a lot of people out there who will dismiss it and say it's all in your head. It's all in your head because I can't see it. So that means you need to believe what I say, and I'm telling you that you're imagining it. I don't know why, but
isn't that wild? Isn't that wild? I think I mentioned this in one of our other episodes. If I am, looking at the sky, and you and I are looking at the sky, okay, and you see something, and I don't see it, does that mean that it's not real? I mean, normally what I do, if I see something that somebody else doesn't see, if they tell me, no, I didn't see that, I will immediately doubt myself. And I will actually give more importance to something that this other person did not experience than to my own experience. We defer to what other people are experiencing. I mean, how crazy is that? Right. Instead of believing what I saw in my mind or my own eyes, I am deferring to, this other person must be right. And that's part of our conditioning. And I mean, if you really think about it, it's completely absurd. Why does it have to be part of a shared reality for it to be real? Who made that rule? Especially when it comes to things that are in other dimensions.
We made that.
Yeah, I mean, Exactly. And it does apply in 3D. It works perfectly fine in 3D. But you see, humanity and our entire planet, we're raising our consciousness. So if we don't try to expand our understanding of our experience of reality beyond the limitations of 3D, we are not going to be able to perceive things in the higher dimensions where our consciousness is rising just naturally.
And that is hindering our evolving.
What's that? Say again?
Hinders our evolving.
Right, exactly.
Goals to evolve because we are stuck with, no, I have to, if I can't see it, if I can't touch it, if I can't hear it, then it's not real.
Right. Right. And going back to the imagination, and this is the part that I think is very important to mention. The whole process, the whole manifestation thing. A few years ago, The Secret came out. It was a book. Okay, how to manifest your dream house, how to manifest your dream date, your partner, your spouse, your soulmate, and so on. And what they say is to start by imagining your dream house, your dream car, and then make a vision board, right? Where you cut out pictures of what you want, you put it on the vision board, and then you invest your emotional energy into it and pretend that you actually have those things already. And that's how they manifest in your own, real life, so to speak. So then wait a minute, is imagination not real, or is it real, or do we really discount imagination and just throw all that away? Because to me it seems like imagination is like where you start with manifesting anything, so it's important. So the other thing that I've learned is that I just got a message on Messenger from Kevin. That'll be interesting to listen to. Anyhow, back to what we were talking about. In the quantum world, let me get this out of here. From that perspective, it's not seeing is believing. It's actually believing is seeing. And this is how that whole process of manifestation works. Say again?
That is so true. Believing is seeing.
Yeah, that's how you manifest things. That's part of the manifestation process. So again, seeing is believing is perfectly valid. It works in 3D. It has its place, and is what we have been conditioned to validate and give importance to. But as we're moving, as our consciousness is moving in higher dimensions, I think it's also important to consider believing is seeing. It's not that it's one at the exclusion of the other. They're both correct, depending on your point of view. If you're looking at things from 3D, seeing is believing makes absolute and perfect sense. But if you're wanting to shift to a higher point of view, a higher perspective, or a different perspective, however you want to look at it, believing is seeing. That's, that also applies. It's just as valid. So, go ahead, Monique.
Your voice.
It's cutting out. It's recording on my computer, so it'll be interesting to see.
But I've been before where I've heard you cut out, but then when the recording didn't. So
right, and now you're cutting out. Like it's almost like when I'm talking, your sound just goes off. And you're almost like you have to wait a little bit before you start speaking, so for it to come through. So I'm not sure why that's going on.
Is that it's dark around?
Yeah, it seems every time we do this, we have a different technical problem, and I have no idea what's happening because I'm not changing anything. So anyway. So the reason why I am bringing this up, this idea of maybe, not looking at reality per se as being real, but more, considering more our experience that is real, experience of our dream time, the things that we experience in our imagination, the things that we experience through our 5 senses or through our 6th sense, which is intuition or the mind or however you want to look at it. The ETs right now, and I've mentioned this before, they are very much interested in connecting with humanity. They've tried to go through it, through the governments to make contact with us, and clearly that's not working very well. So what they're doing right now is they are trying to reach out to us through dream time, through telepathic communication. And a lot of the times, those experiences in those realms, they feel very dreamy. Imagination and dream time, they have kind of the same quality of this fuzziness, that is just not quite tangible. It's still there. It's a sense, but it doesn't feel solid in the same way that 3D does. So we've been conditioned to dismiss that as it doesn't exist. And I am suggesting that perhaps it's okay to consider that those dreamy experiences are just as valid as the experiences that we're having in the solid 3D world. I mean, think about it. Who made the rule that it's not real? That's the thing that I'm curious about. Who said that it's not real and why?
Yeah.
Why are dreams not real?
I think I know why they, for me, it usually comes in my sleep paralysis. Well, my sleep paralysis, I'm awake, but why it comes through in my dreams and that is because because Monique, you're a chatterbox. And so it's like if they come in my dreams and and then all the doubting and then it's like
Yeah.
they speak without me doing all this.
Right, right. And see, there's a difference between discernment and, being skeptical or empirical. Being skeptical and empirical is a type of very rigid thinking in the way that I'm perceiving it. Discernment, however, feels a little bit more flexible, as in, I'm contemplating whether this is real for me or valid actually is for me. And so I suggest that, don't just believe something blindly, but it is important to use some discernment and, kind of figure out where is that information coming from. One thing that I know is a source of concern, let's put it that way, for a lot of people, they're afraid to open up to telepathic communication because they're afraid that they're going to be connecting with beings who are malevolent, and somehow they're going to lose control to these beings. So that's another reason, we've been conditioned to, don't go there, don't, engage in that way because it's very dangerous. And
I've heard that invitation.
yeah, yeah. And so what I would like to suggest, this has worked for me, is that the beings that I like to connect with are positive. They are empowering. They make me feel more empowered and positive and loved. And if I am getting any messages that don't satisfy that, if I start to feel like I'm being judged, or I start to feel, like I'm worthless or inferior in some way, then I know that that's either something that's coming from my own conditioning, okay, that maybe I'm filtering some information through my own feelings of worthlessness and shame and doubt, which all of us have to some extent because of the conditioning in our system. And so I don't listen to those messages. I completely disregard them, because if somebody is going to give me some constructive criticism, I've learned that they will do it in a way where I will not feel bad about myself. And our guides are a perfect example of beings who communicate with us through these other realities. And we dismiss them. It's a thought pops in my mind. Oh, I should probably do this right now. And I say, nah, 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 I don't feel like it, or it's my imagination. It really doesn't matter. And in reality, it's a guide who can see from his perspective that I'm about to, come up to a traffic jam, and is suggesting you might want to take this exit. And I'm like, nah, I don't want to do that. And so, that's why I think it's important to at least consider being open to the idea of the possibility that communication and through these other realities is just as valid as the type of communication that we're having here. And setting some boundaries around what you will accept. In other words, anything that makes you feel down or negative or disempowered is to be disregarded. Whatever that's coming from, if a being actually means to come across that way, that's definitely not somebody you want to interact with. And if it's just information that's being filtered through our own, negative conditioning, again, why would I want to pay attention to that? That's not productive. It's distorted.
Yep.
So, it took me a little while to kind of realize, how I want to experience these other realms. But, I'm okay with it now. It's working for me. And, that's why I'm sharing it with with you guys. Maybe you want to consider looking at things, from that perspective and not be so immediately dismissive.
Right. I want to say too, like a prime example is what I experienced yesterday. And I was actually talking with Aurora yesterday. And when I was talking with her, immediately, um, okay, I was interested in joining. But I heard so clearly and so strong, a loud no, you know? And then uh, was I started, and I told Aurora, I said, oh, I just got this strong no. So I'm not supposed to join this group or any of these groups and that. But the other side of me felt like it was, the negative side.
Yeah, you're being left out.
Like being told because you're not important enough. You're not ready for that kind of thing. But what happened was when Aurora and I were talking, a cardinal literally come out from the bush, and I had to slam on my brakes because it came and flew right in front of me and landed on the road in front of me.
In the middle of the road.
Right. In the middle of the road. That also brings this up. People also think, well, I haven't had any, I think when people think experiences, that automatically the important experiences are going to be the big, loud, boom, kind of in your face kind of thing, because not everybody, I included, have never physically seen right in front of me an ET standing in front of me and that, and I would love that, especially since I've seen the dark things. They don't care about showing themselves physically to me. But not like, these good light-hearted ET beings, that kind of thing and that. But yet, if I think about the little things, the cardinal flying in it, does that mean that that's, less relevant or because I did big bam boom?
Actually, you bring up a very good point, and that is that we have so much interaction with other realms. The angelic realm, our spirit guides, ETs, our star families, they all operate from a much more subtle dimension of reality, okay? And because, like you said, Monique, if it's not in my face, it's not real. But that's not true. And so we are missing out on a whole range of experiences that are much more subtle, yet they are just as important and just as valid as these physical experiences that you were having right now. And it's just really a matter of just considering the idea of expanding into maybe accepting, or at least considering that some of these things may be real. And, like what you said about the cardinal, sometimes, angel numbers, people will recognize, numbers that repeat. Or sometimes I will drive and there will be a billboard with a phrase on it that is like on point exactly with whatever it was that I was thinking in that very moment as I'm driving by. And so those are some of the more subtle things that we can experience that are important. They validate a lot of our experience. Oh, yeah, there's a cardinal. That's just crazy. That's crazy. Yeah, tell us about that.
I didn't even notice that this was laying on my computer yesterday. I don't know, but I'm trying to get it.
That is just crazy. Right in the middle, okay?
Yeah. So I've definitely been being given signs and that, and I totally believe. It's funny because as you were speaking, I all of a sudden got these words in my head. Just
so we do have some company here.
I mean, no, we didn't mean that we don't think you should be in any groups, just not that group.
Right. Now, tell us about the cardinal, because you sent me something earlier that was really cool about the spiritual meaning of cardinal. You looked it up. Remember what you sent me a little while ago? Yeah.
Yeah, because I thought that it had something to do, I don't know why, but I thought it had something to do about intuition, which it does. But its main purpose is love and support an unseen forces being
Oh,
around you, and that
aha.
represents that there's, unseen beings or whatever, and angelic, it said, are around you at that moment.
Right, right. So this is the way that I would interpret that entire situation, and you tell me if this is how you see it too. You get a message, no, you shouldn't be in this group, and you start to feel excluded, and I'm not good enough. And then this cardinal runs right in front of your car. I mean, it's red. It's stop, okay? Don't go there with that train of thought. Stop. We're here. Hello, okay? We're the good guys. Don't go there. And to me, that would be confirmation that, oh, they have heard me. They know that I took it the wrong way, and they're trying to basically validate that, what they're saying is coming from a positive place, and I'm just misinterpreting it, just
Yeah.
filtering it through my own negative conditioning. That's how I interpret that.
That's unfortunately something that, because I've experienced rejection so much in my human life from other humans, and feeling rejected and being the misfit and pushed out all the time. So automatically, because of that conditioning, because that's my experience after experience after experience, I had a struggle with the good ETs and all that are rejecting me. I'm not,
Yeah. And it's not just you. It's not just you. Unconditional love, the unconditional, these ETs, that's what I feel from them, is unconditional love. And unconditional love is very hard to find in our system. Okay. I mean, if you think about it,
it's
the
but
guy who the guy who embodied unconditional love, and it's interesting that we're recording this a couple of days before Easter. We're still talking about him. He was the embodiment of unconditional love. It made such a huge impression. He was so special. And that demonstrates that, in our system, things are very conditional. You have to earn. Okay.
yep.
And I'm not saying that there's no place for earning, but what I'm saying is that,
To be loved. You
right,
should.
unconditional love is very hard to come by. And so, because of that, we perceive these messages, like Monique, like what you were saying, through these feelings of worthlessness, of being rejected, of being excluded, and so on. And that is just the filter that we've been conditioned with. And it's everyone, okay? All of us, for one reason or another, even if our parents loved us unconditionally more than anything, we go to school, there are bullies. Everybody has a bully at some point, or a mean teacher, or somebody says the wrong thing without even meaning to hurt your feelings. Yeah, you've had all of them, Monique.
Meant to hurt my feelings. He waited for me every day when I would be ready to get off the bus, and I would literally be worrying the entire day at school, wondering how I would outrun that rooster that really had it in
Oh,
for me.
yeah. Yeah, the rooster, right, right. Now, here's the other thing that is absurd. Again, this is absurd. Let's take a look at this one. Why is it that when somebody pays me a compliment and somebody else is mean to me and insults me, why is it that I remember the insult and I
Right.
roll in that over and over? This person was so mean to me, as opposed to going on and on and on about somebody who told me I was wonderful or whatever, something positive. So you see how much more emotional energy we spend focusing on the negative for whatever reason. Okay, it really doesn't matter why, but it's important to be aware that we do that. What was that, Monique?
Like what you had said before, we let them live in our head rent free.
Right, right. And we all have a tendency to do that, okay? So it's not about, oh, we're not mature enough or whatever. No, this is just a part of the human condition. But it's important to recognize what we're doing, because until we recognize that we're doing something that is really pretty absurd if you think about it, okay? Um, we can't change our perspective. You can't change our perception of it. And, that's why I think these little conversations that we're having are important, because the whole idea behind ascension is to really change our perspective not to exclude what we have been experiencing until now. It's not to exclude 3D or say that 3D is bad or, we're going to escape 3D. That's not what it's about. Ascension has to do with integrating all of our experiences. So along with 3D, being open up to other perspectives. And that only enhances our experience. So, that's kind of how I look at it. And there is one example that I have that just to kind of give you an idea about, what I mean about shifting perspectives, really. I have heard in some interviews that what characterizes a fourth dimension is a very different relationship to time. In other words, the experience of time is no longer linear. It's almost like, you step outside of time and time is still passing for everybody else, but not for you. You're like sort of encased in this little bubble reality where time doesn't pass. You sort of, time out, or so to speak. And one of the things that I used to do when I was a little girl, I would be bored driving in my parents' car as a passenger or riding a long train ride. And I used to pretend that it was me who was not moving and it was the scenery around me that was moving. I was stationary, but the scenery around me was what was passing me by. And let me tell you, that made for a very, very different perspective and experience of what was actually going on. And I'm giving that as an example of what it feels like to shift perspective, to see things from another point of view, like a different dimension, for example. It's not exactly the same as what I've just described. It's a little different from that. But this whole idea of turning things upside down and considering that it might be the opposite. What is it that's me that is stationary and everybody else is moving around me? I mean, how does that feel? It's fun, right? It's fun to explore these things and see how it feels. We are under no obligation to remain faithful exclusively to our perception of 3D. It's okay to explore, and it's okay to pretend, and it's okay to imagine. Think about how much fun that is. As opposed to, and that's why it's important to be around people who share your ideas, so you can bounce ideas off of each other. It is fun, it's empowering, it's just expansive. Yes, go ahead, Monique.
It's funny when you said that, because it brought a question to my mind that I think is really vital, very important to bring up. What if you, unfortunately, are a person who is not surrounded by, and you can't help, and I don't do this because I love my family and that, but if you don't have people around you who are supportive of, say family, friends, that all around you don't share your field of what makes you feel good, what resonates with you, and that where do you get the strength from when you're surrounded by nothing but...
Yep. That's, what? That makes it difficult. And, ultimately, I believe, and this has just been from my own personal experience, that we bring things into our lives or attract things to ourselves depending on what it is that we are exploring, from the level of a higher mind. Like, for example, me, Aurora, I really don't like what's happening right now. I don't have any friends, let's say. I feel very alone. And, I really don't like this. Why would I ever attract this kind of experience in my life? Well, there's got to be some part of me somewhere at a higher mind level or at a soul level who feels it is necessary for me to explore that experience. It's not meant to be good or bad. That's,
Right.
part of the thing. What's that? Say again.
It's a tool.
Right. And so, from the perspective of the higher mind, or our guides for that matter, everything we do here is not meant to be good or bad. It's just an exploration that creates a specific experience that expands our understanding of reality for good or bad. And for example, if we come into this life with the idea of exploring abundance, let's say, I could be exploring the idea of abundance by being, dirt poor, because that has to do with the idea of abundance, lack of abundance. Or I can explore it from the perspective of, being filthy rich or the richest person on the planet. That's still the idea of abundance.
This person through other ways, maybe not money, but you're the richest person. Not to, but I really, because I don't want to lose this thought. I had an experience when I was in Egypt, and I actually put it in, but I turned it into my story, and I added a little more to it. Okay, but it really wasn't as expanded as what I wrote in the story. But there was a woman who came up to me. She was elderly, and you could see she had had a hard life. She had no shoes on her feet. Okay, she had nothing. She was clearly homeless. Okay, she made her way on the hard, cold pavement, dirty streets, and everything. No shoes to come up to me. I was with my husband at the time. We were going through a whole, you know, thing with the, you know, marriage process, yada, yada, yada. And she said to me, I didn't understand because I didn't speak Arabic. But my husband told me afterwards that he said, she said that you look like an angel. And it just made the biggest smile on her face. And I remembered thinking to myself, what an honor. That above all the compliments that I've ever had to have, I'm sorry, but if I have a compliment from Mr. Hoity Toity, who's, like a king and got, he's a celebrity and he's got tons and tons and tons and tons of this, that, and the other. You know which compliment means more to me? The person who has nothing, because they are going through this life in just the worst case scenario, not even to be able to have shoes on their feet. And they're happy. And they're happy to see me because somehow, whatever it is, made them feel good in their heart. And that, for me, resonates more than Mr. I've got everything, to have somebody. And I remember thinking, wow, I mean, she has nothing, and yet she's this happiness. Do you see this happiness? So I'm sorry, I didn't want it,
Yeah,
but I,
no, I like that. I like that. Yes, because for most of us, exploring the idea of abundance from the perspective of I have nothing kind of seems like it's a bad thing, that I would be in an unhappy place. And yet, you just gave an example of somebody who had literally nothing and yet was in a place where she could appreciate, beautiful things. It was what she had. Her abundance didn't come from material things, it came from other places.
sadly, the people who have so much and want more, that have all these material things and that, it's sad because it replaces your identity. You feel you're not going to have this identity unless you have what the Joneses have. I've got to have all the latest tech. I've got to be above all that, and I got to have more and that, because what does that say about me? Look at, I'm happy. I've got this life because I have all these things. But when you become to where your emphasis is on the material things, you are disconnecting yourself from your higher being of your true self and who you are supposed to be. That
Right. Yes, and you know what? We are a very materialistic society. Okay, we've been conditioned to be so. You know, you're never good enough, you're never pretty enough, you're never skinny enough, you don't ever have enough muscles or the nicest car. There's always something else that you have to buy, and that's just part of our conditioning. That's very, very true. And also, when we are focused on the material things and we begin to identify with that and draw our self-worth from the things that we have, you're right, it does disconnect us from our true selves and also from these other non-tangible, more subtle realms, because we place no value on that. We place value on what can be seen, touched, and, gives us status. And so, sure, I am abundant and I have a nice car, I have a nice house, I have whatever, but I'm completely disconnected from the things that actually matter.
And you notice something that a lot of times you hear people who have, or they won the lottery, and they have all these things, and they're not happy.
Right.
And not happy. The old saying, "You can't take it with you," is really funny, because when you go into that other world, it doesn't mean diddly squat. I don't care if you have a Lamborghini. I don't care if you have so much money you can sit there and burn that. That is, a false reality of happiness. That is the physical 3D thing. And guess what? When you go to the other world, it's not there.
Yeah.
It's not there. So you don't want to, we all want. I mean, I have to, I desperately am I need a vehicle really bad right now. And but I look, that is more for practical purposes than it is.
Makes sense. That's reasonable.
So there are physical things that we want and need because we need it for functioning in society. But does that mean that I base my happiness on, the physical thing that I managed to achieve? Well, I am happy in that it makes my life a little easier, but my true happiness comes when I am connected more to the all divine, the creator, and the beings, and that unconditional love that we all crave so much.
Right.
And need. And brings my next point. I have this fear, as I was telling you about.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Let's talk about that.
This is funny. It is literally my biggest fear. And most people, when they think of their biggest fear, it's usually like,
speaking in public.
Saying this, and don't get me wrong, it's not like I would want to have this horrible death, right? Okay, but death is temporary, and that kind of thing. But I'm talking about on the more permanent realm. And the fear, a lot of people think, well, in the permanent realm, like after you pass, would be, to go to this fire or hell and these demonics. And that's what a lot of people think, I actually have something to me that is more fearful than any demonic entity or, and that is so completely isolation that I'm in this dark void, chasm, whatever you want to call it, where there's absolutely no non-existence of any kind of life whatsoever, good or bad. Nothing. Just being in where you don't even see like a fire, like when they say hell and all that, but there's no fire, there's no beings, there's no nothing. You are so completely disconnected that you have absolutely nothing all around you. And it's just you, and you're stuck alone with your own self and your own thoughts, no guiding, no direction. And like I said, even whether, even if, say, I wouldn't want the dark beings around me, however, but to imagine being in this complete state of nothingness, nothing around you, to me is absolutely petrifying. And there was actually a movie that was out, and this was not the one I mentioned to you because I knew you probably wouldn't relate, but there, a movie that I remembered because we talked about the Will Smith one. But the Will Smith one, he still had like there was still encounters with these, you know.
Zombies, I think they were.
But in this movie, this was like it had been after a nuclear war. Okay, we know the movies, make it completely different from how, but there was not a soul, no life in the trees, like no existing forms of any kind of life, good or bad. There was nothing. He was in total isolation. There was nothing. And I think this is why I have this fear. Like I start getting a panic attack
Yeah, I can see it.
out in the middle of nowhere. Like I cannot handle being out in the middle of nowhere. I get really freaked out, even though I know that my guides and everything are there, but because I'm living in this physical reality. But that is my greatest fear, would be to pass and be in a complete void, that there's nothing, not light or dark. There's just nothing.
Well, while we're talking about greatest fears, my greatest fear is to be buried alive. But yeah.
Yeah.
Anyhow, which is kind of a similar concept to what you're describing. But I'm curious, why are you afraid of that? I mean, why do you think is something gonna happen to you? Or is it because nothing's gonna happen to you? Why are you afraid of that? Do you know?
I have often tried to figure that out about why it is this total. It's funny. In saying that, I have my periods and time of where I don't want anybody disturbing me.
Well,
But
alone and being alone and being, what's the word I'm
I,
looking for? Isolated are not the same thing.
yeah, you're right. Because when I want to be alone, I'm not really alone. For one thing, that is my way to. I'm actually um, quite busy with my mind in communicating with those on the other side, my guides and nature, because nature is so full of life. And I love, if I'm going to meditate, I like to be around nature in that, because you can even like concentrate on you're hearing the leaves um, rustling in the wind, and you hear like the little crickets or whatever. And it's like, to me, that experience is more experience of being alive than ever. And you feel less alone when there's times when you want to be alone. So,
Yeah.
but it's in a good way.
Um, I may have an idea for you that you might want to consider. Um, in order for there to be an I, there has to be an other. Okay? Really, I mean, this is like at the foundation of creation. There, let there be light, and there was light, and there was dark. So, in order for me to exist, there has to be another that's separate from me. If there is no other that's separate from me, I'm not aware of myself. It's as if I don't exist. There's nothing for me to compare myself to and separate myself from. So perhaps you are afraid of not existing.
That's true. That's
And
true.
I would like to set your mind at ease that if you exist, you cannot stop existing. Non-existent, Bashar says non-existence is already full of all the things that don't exist. Okay, that's its quality. Non-existence is its quality. If you exist, you cannot stop existing. Now, I don't know if that alleviates your fear in any way, shape, or form. Probably not, because it's all heady, okay? But
If you only had your mind to listen to and nothing else.
oh, well, wait a minute. Let's not go there, because I go to these retreats for 10 days when I meditate in silence 12 hours a day, and I love it, being alone with my own mind. But Anyway, yeah, I mean, it's interesting why we have these fears. And I think we can really find a lot about ourselves if we really try to dive into what is it about that experience that is so terrifying. And when I was mentioning earlier about I'm afraid that being buried alive, the reason I'm afraid of that is not so much because I'm isolated, but because it would take me a long time to die.
Yeah.
And that would be painful. So I guess I'm really afraid of dying in a painful way, like, just sort of stretched out over, I don't know how long it takes for somebody to die if they don't have any food and water. But, if it's days, I don't really want to be in that place for days, okay?
That would be horrible.
I know. And I'm actually wondering if maybe there's a past life someplace that I'm picking up on where, I am actually buried alive somehow. It used to be that in some cultures, when the man died, his wife, even if she was living, she would have to be buried with him while she was still alive.
Wow.
Yeah, that's pretty horrible and terrifying. So I don't know. Maybe I read that when I was a little kid and it just sort of left an impression on me. I don't know. In any case, that's my greatest fear, but I don't really spend a lot of time dwelling on it because.
And same here, but I just found it was an interesting subject.
Yeah, no, it is. It is interesting. It really is. One of the things that I've realized, because I've suffered from loneliness and depression and despair for a huge, large portion of my life, really. So I'm very familiar with that emotion of just being isolated and cut off from everything. It's a very unpleasant emotion, very painful. And what I have found is that since I have been considering, expanding my awareness of the more subtle realities that are out there, I no longer feel alone, ever.
Right.
I just know I can feel my connection to these other beings who are always there.
They are. In fact, when I was looking behind me in that, I wasn't being weird, but I literally felt like I have them standing all behind me.
Maybe that's why your audio is cutting out.
That was the impression I was getting in my mind when I kept. This was after my cutting out and that, and I was looking over at Chloe, who's got her back to me now, my cat, to see if she noticed it because I could just feel them. She was looking.
Interesting. Who was there? Who was it? Do you know? Or what was it?
It felt like star family beings.
Ah, okay. All right. These are the ones who told you no, you don't belong in that group?
Yeah, combination.
Aha, how about that?
Also from Kevin's Council of Eight. Or
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah, you know what?
Come to me, who I felt like is behind me.
Interesting. Let me see if I can get up a picture of Ward since we brought that up. We really need to talk about the Council of Eight here at some point because they really do play a lot. They play a huge role in our
maybe
in
that's
our
why
spiritual quest. Okay. Now I know that I'm recording. I'm screen recording on my computer, so you can't see it, but everybody else can. Let me see if I can share the portrait that I made of Ord here real quick. Bear with me for a moment, and there he is.
Oh, I see him. Yeah.
Can you see him? Okay, there we go. Alrighty. Yeah, so this is Orth. There are 7 other beings in the Council of Eight, and I really think that we should dedicate a show. Maybe the next show we can dedicate it to the Council of Eight. Ort is an Arcturian from the 5th dimension, and he has been in contact with myself, with Monique, and Kevin, the guy I mentioned earlier who sent me the message. He has known the Council of Eight and Ort personally. I mean, he sees them in the physical, okay? They came in his bathroom when he was 8 years old. It scared, terrified him. But in any case, yeah, they do hang around, and I had a chat with Ort yesterday about some things that, he asked me to do. And honestly, at the beginning, it felt to me like I was making it all up. Okay, like it was all my imagination, and I was just doing it because I wanted to belong. I respected Kevin, and I looked up to him, and it's like, oh, if Kevin believes this, then I really want to believe it because I want to be part of that crowd. But truthfully, it has gotten to the point where I feel him. I mean, it almost feels like a telephone conversation, but it's not words. For me, the way I experience it is emotional. And whenever I talk about him, like I'm doing right now, I can feel him. I can feel his presence. And here's the weird thing. Monique can feel him in her room, and I can feel him in my room.
Actually, I got a message that
Did you?
they're all.
They're
I
all
guess
there?
Yeah, because of what I went through and everything.
Ha! I told you. Yeah, we had a conversation. Monique and I had a conversation about, she was feeling excluded. And I told her that the Council of Eight is not excluding her and that they love her very much. And, I know it because they've told me. But anyway, we just basically ran out of time. And I really think maybe next show we will go into the Council of Eight because there are some fascinating experiences that both Monique and I have had with them and also other people. So, talk about...
Bring up Eric. The next one, I wanted to make sure we bring up Ari Lou's experience with the military helicopters and the ships, UFO ships, because I had a similar experience, but mine, I had a loss of time. But we'll get on to that in the next.
Yeah. That would be interesting. That definitely would be interesting. And again, I'm so glad you brought her up because she's been sharing her experiences with us. She puts commentary or she sends an email. Did she send an email? Is that how you found out, Monique?
She messaged me because I added her as a friend because I saw she was following our stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
It was like,
right.
I believe I had sent her a friend request and she accepted right away. And I think it made her feel good because,
Yeah, and I mean, that's why we are doing this show. And I think I'm not going to be mentioning often enough that we look forward to you guys sending in your artwork, sharing your information. It's our email is Third Eye Sister Souls, just all spelled out, THIRD, whatever spelled out, at gmail.com. Or, through Messenger. Monique, you see her name up there, Monique Brunette. Mine is cut off the page. But, she's the one who deals with the social media, thank goodness, because I'm not into that.
I work with that. But I wanted to say that when you do the Third Eye email, each third has a capital T, I has a capital E.
No, it doesn't matter. No.
Oh,
yeah. I just wrote it like that so that it would be easier to read, so you could see that it was actually several rather than one long string of letters. But anyway, we are going to go and leaving you with this impression of Ort, who I don't know about you, Monique, but he is so excited right now. That's how he feels to me. He is just thrilled. What did you say?
Because his picture is up, or just...
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason why I drew these portraits. They asked me to share them with everybody, so I guess I'm doing what he asked me to do. But in any case, we're going to go, or otherwise we're just going to keep going on forever. So bye. We will see you guys next week. Yes, Tuesday. Look for our videos on Tuesday or Wednesday, okay?
Okay. Bye.
Bye.